My sister ditched her kids for a man. 6 months later, she broke into my house. You stole them, she said, so I took her to court, and won. They're my kids, she screamed after vanishing for 183 days. They hid behind me and said, we want to stay. The judge gave me custody. My 35-year-old sister Julia dropped off her 2 children at my place 6 months ago and then vanished. Now she's back, demanding that I return them. I'm divided between doing what is best for the children and coping with familial pressure. I'm Mark, 38, and I've been married to Lisa, 36, for 12 years. We have one daughter, Lily, who is 10. My sister Julia has 2 children, Tyler, 14, and Zoe, 12. Their father died in a car accident 3 years ago, and Julia has been their sole caregiver since then. Julia and I grew up in a rather regular family. Our parents died when I was 25 and she was 22. After that, all we had was each other. Julia has always struggled with responsibility. Even as a child, she would start projects but never complete them. She'd become passionate about something new every several months, then abandon it totally. Our parents used to joke that she had a goldfish's attention span. Julia moved around a lot after high school, changing professions and relationships. She worked as a waiter before attempting to become a cosmetics artist and then a photographer. Nothing stuck. She met her spouse, Jake, when she was 28. He was a truck driver, made a decent living, and appeared to ground her. They married shortly, had Tyler a year later, and Zoe 2 years after that. Jake's death altered everything. Julia received a fair compensation from the trucking company's insurance, but instead of being prudent with the money, she began spending it on frivolous items. She purchased a new automobile, fancy clothes, and took trips with pals. She explained that she needed to live a little after everything that had happened. The kids started showing up at my place more frequently. At first it was only weekend trips. Julia would drop them out Friday night and pick them up on Sunday evening. She stated that she needed some time alone to process her loss. Lisa and I were delighted to help. Tyler and Zoe are nice kids, and Lily enjoyed having her cousins around. However, the weekend trips grew into week-long stays. Julia would call at the last minute, saying she needed to work more shifts or had an emergency. The children would arrive with few clothes, no school materials, and often without having had dinner. I began buying them clothes to keep at our house and ensuring they had all they needed for school. Julia and Marcus began dating about 8 months ago. She met him in a bar and developed a total obsession with him. She would phone me continuously to tell me about their dates, how wonderful he was, and how he was assisting her in discovering who she truly was. Marcus was younger than her, perhaps 29 or 30, and he did not have children. He worked at a gym and enjoyed fitness and travel. The kids started spending more time with us. Julia would pick them up for a few days and then drop them off again. Tyler started asking me why his mother no longer wanted them around. I wasn't sure what to tell him. Zoe just became quieter and spent more time in her room when she was at our place. Things worsened when Julia decided to move in with Marcus. She got a 1-bedroom apartment across town and invited the kids to visit on weekends, but the weekends kept being canceled. Marcus disliked having kids around, and Julia always had an explanation. She was working longer hours, they had plans, or Marcus was going through a difficult period and required space. The final straw arrived 6 months ago. Julia arrived at my house on Tuesday night with Tyler and Zoe. She had 2 garbage bags full of kids' clothes and asked me to watch them for a few weeks. She stated that Marcus had been offered a position in another state, and they planned to relocate together. She would send for the kids once they were situated. I asked her how long a couple weeks would last. She said maybe a month or 2, but she couldn't give me an exact time frame. Lisa and I discussed it that night after Julia departed. We both knew she wouldn't be back anytime soon. The children were also aware of the situation. Tyler helped Zoe move her belongings in Lily's room, as if they were going to stay forever. I called Julia the next day to ask for further information about her plans. She stated that Marcus had gotten a job operating a gym in Arizona, and they would be departing that weekend. She promised to phone the kids every few days and send money to cover their bills. She claimed she'd return to get them before the new school year began. Julia made calls for the first few weeks. She would FaceTime Tyler and Zoe, telling them about Arizona, how hot it was, and the apartment she and Marcus were looking at. She provided me $500 the first month and promised to send more shortly, but the calls got less frequent. By the 3rd month she was only phoning once per week, then every 2 weeks. Money stopped coming after the 2nd month. I didn't want to ask the kids about it because I knew they were already coping with plenty. Tyler began having difficulties in school. His grades fell, and he was suspended after getting into a fight. Zoe stopped talking about her mother and began calling Lisa Mom on occasion, which made Lisa cry when she thought no one was looking. I registered both children in the local school district and designated myself as their guardian. I had to produce verification that they were living with me full-time. The school counselor approached me and asked if there were any custody concerns I should be aware of. I informed her that their mother was temporarily unable to care for them but will be returning shortly. During this time, I tried phoning Julia several times. Sometimes she would respond quickly, as if she was busy or distracted. Other times the calls went directly to voicemail. When I did talk to her, she would ask about the kids in a broad sense, such as how they were doing in school or whether they were being good. She never asked explicit questions about their daily life, their friends, or their concerns. Our children had settled into a rhythm at home. Tyler joined the basketball squad and gradually improved his grades. Zoe became friends with some of the girls in her class and began smiling more. Lily enjoyed having them around all the time. Our house was busier and louder, yet everything seemed perfect. Lisa and I needed to make some financial adjustments. We fed 5 people instead of 3, bought clothes for 3 kids instead of 1, and spent more money on school supplies and activities, but we made it. I took on some extra work, and Lisa began working a few more hours at her part-time job. Julia's calls abruptly ceased about 2 months ago. I tried phoning her several times but never received an answer. I even attempted to phone Marcus, but his line was disconnected. I checked Julia's Facebook page and noticed she hadn't posted anything in over a month. I began to worry that something had happened to her. Then, last week, Julia arrived at my door. She looked different, thinner, exhausted, and her hair was tangled. She said she needed to speak with me about getting Tyler and Zoe back. She came inside and sat at my kitchen table as if nothing had happened. She informed me that things did not work out with Marcus. He broke up with her after a few months and she had to leave their flat. She had been staying with friends and worked part-time, but she was eager to get back on her feet. She stated that she missed the children and wanted to take them home. I inquired as to where her home was. She stated she found a little apartment approximately an hour away, and had a job interview scheduled. She planned to pick up Tyler and Zoe that weekend and enroll them in a new school district. I informed her that the kids were settled here. They had friends. They were doing well in school and had been living with us for 6 months. I suggested we chat to them first and see how they felt about moving again. Julia became outraged and stated that they were her children, not mine. She said that I was only babysitting them while she figured things out. She accused me of attempting to take her children and claimed I had no right to make decisions regarding their life. The kids arrived home from school while we were talking. Tyler noticed Julia and simply stood at the doorway. Zoe hid behind Lisa. Neither of them ran to hug her or appeared delighted to meet her. They just stood there, looking uneasy. Julia tried to converse with them, inquiring about school and their friends, but they gave brief responses. Tyler inquired about the location of their home when she informed them that she was prepared to take them there. She discussed the new flat and the job interview. Zoe inquired if Marcus would be present. Julia declined, saying it would be just the 3 of them. Tyler asked if they could stay at my home instead. Julia's face transformed completely. She appeared upset and enraged at the same time. She claimed she was their mother, and they belonged to her. Tyler stated that he did not want to change schools again and leave his pals. Zoe began crying and proceeded upstairs to her room. Julia and I continued our conversation after the kids went to bed. She acknowledged that leaving was difficult for everyone, but she needed to prove that she could be a decent mother. She assured the children that everything would be okay once they adapted to their new surroundings. I persuaded her that she should wait a few months until she had a solid job and could adequately provide for them. She stated she could not wait any longer since she missed them so badly. She stated she will return on Saturday to pick them up. I had been thinking about this all week. The children definitely do not want to leave. They've settled in and are content. But Julia is their mother, so she has every right to take them. I know she adores them, but I also know she is not prepared to be a full-time mom again. Her track record speaks for itself. Lisa believes I should fight for the children, perhaps consult with a lawyer about custody. But Julia is their mother, and she has not committed any legal wrongs. She's simply been irresponsible and unreliable. I'm not sure if that is enough to keep the youngsters away from her. Julia is expecting an answer tomorrow. I'm not sure what to tell her. The children are afraid and confused. Lily is distraught because she does not want her cousins to leave. Lisa is attempting to remain supportive, but I can tell she is concerned about Tyler and Zoe. Am I wrong in refusing to let Julia take the kids? Should I accept her rights as their mother, even if I believe she is making a mistake? I feel torn between doing what is legal and what is best for Tyler and Zoe. Update 1. I never expected the response I received to my original post. Thank you to everyone who provided advice and support. A lot has happened since then, and I wanted to keep you all updated on the situation. I informed Julia that the kids could stay with me for a few more weeks until she adjusted into her new apartment. She was unhappy about it, but she consented. She stated that she planned to use the time to find a nicer place and straighten out her career situation. She promised to call the kids every few days and pay them a visit on weekends. For the first week, everything appeared to be going as planned. Julia called Tyler and Zoe on Tuesday and Friday. She informed them about her job interview and how she was looking for 2-bedroom flats so they could each have their own area. The children were cautiously optimistic at the prospect of seeing their mother more frequently. But then Julia arrived at the house unexpectedly on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work, while Lisa was at home with the children. Julia mentioned that she wanted to take Tyler and Zoe out to supper and maybe see a movie. Lisa called to ask me what she should do. I assured her that was probably fine, as long as Julia returned them that night. Julia did not return them that night or the next night. When Lisa dialed her phone, it went directly to voicemail. By Saturday, I was beginning to panic. I dialed every number I had for Julia but couldn't reach her. I even traveled to the apartment complex where she claimed to live, but the office manager informed me that they had never heard of her. Tyler and Zoe returned on Sunday evening. Julia dropped them off and departed before I could speak with her. The children were exhausted and disturbed. Tyler informed me they had been staying at the house of a guy Julia met at a bar. He claimed the person had other people living there, and it was noisy and untidy. Zoe said she disliked the man because he smelled horrible, and constantly asked her about our family. I was infuriated. I contacted Julia and left many voicemails, telling her that she couldn't just take the kids without telling me where they were going. I told her that if she wanted to spend time with them, she needed to make arrangements ahead of time and return them when she promised. Julia contacted me back the next day, yelling at me on the phone. She claimed I was controlling and treated the kids as if they were mine rather than hers. She claimed she did not need my permission to spend time with her own children. She accused me of attempting to turn Tyler and Zoe against her, and she promised to get them back forever. Things worsened from there. Julia began coming up at random times. When I was at work, she would pick up the kids from school without notifying anyone and keep them for many hours. The school phoned me numerous times because they weren't sure whether they should release Tyler and Zoe to her or not. I needed to go to the school office and explain the problem. I showed them the paperwork I had from when I enrolled the kids and said that Julia was welcome to pick them up, but she had to follow the same sign-out protocols as any other parent. The secretary looked at me as if this were the most difficult custody case she had ever heard of. Julia picked up the kids from school 2 weeks ago and did not return them for 3 days. I called the police to report them missing, but the officer told me it was a civil matter because Julia was their biological mother. He suggested that I consult a family lawyer about formal custody arrangements. When Julia eventually got Tyler and Zoe back, they looked awful. Their clothes were soiled. Tyler had a bruising on his arm, and Zoe refused to speak to anyone. Julia explained that they had been staying with a friend who lived approximately 2 hours away, and her phone had died so she couldn't contact them. I asked Tyler what had happened to his arm. He claimed he fell off his bike at Julia's friend's house. When I inquired where he got the bike, he replied Julia's friend's boyfriend let him use it, but it was too large for him and he couldn't stop correctly. Julia stated that boys will be boys and I was making a huge deal out of nothing. But, when I was helping Zoe with her schoolwork that night, she told me she didn't want to go with Julia anymore. She claimed Julia's pals were mean, and one of them yelled at her for getting in the way. She stated that Julia spent the majority of her time chatting to grown-ups and not paying attention to her or Tyler. I made a decision that night. I contacted a family lawyer the next morning. The lawyer informed me that because I had been caring for the children for more than 6 months and had enrolled them in school, I had a strong case for temporary guardianship. She said Julia's unstable conduct and inability to provide steady housing would work to my advantage. The lawyer wrote Julia a letter informing her that I was filing for interim guardianship and that she would need to adhere to a visitation plan if she wanted to spend time with the children. The letter also stated that she couldn't transport Tyler and Zoe out of the school district without my permission. Julia arrived at my place the same day with the letter in her hand. She was as angry as I'd ever seen her. She claimed I was attempting to abduct her children and that she would battle me in court. She stated that she was their mother, and no judge would take them away from her. I told her I wasn't aiming to steal her children permanently. I said that I just wanted to ensure their safety and stability while she figured out her living arrangement. I promised to arrange an acceptable visitation plan so that she could spend time with them without upsetting their school schedule. Julia stated that she did not want visits. She wants her children back full-time. She stated that she had gotten a job and was putting her life together. When I inquired for further information about the job, she was ambiguous and stated it was a work-from-home employment that would begin soon. Tyler and Zoe were upstairs throughout this chat, but I'm sure they could hear us arguing. Tyler asked me later that night if Julia would take them away. I honestly informed him that I had no idea what was going to happen, but Lisa and I would do everything we could to keep them safe. The court date for the interim guardianship hearing is next month. My lawyer claims we have a good case, but there is no certainty. Julia is their biological mother and has not been convicted of any crimes. The fact that she voluntarily left children with me for 6 months counts in my favor, but a judge may still feel that she needs a chance to establish her parenting abilities. I'm worried about what will happen if Julia regains possession. The students are doing well in school and have found friends here. Lily would be upset if her cousins were to depart. Lisa and I have become accustomed to being a family of 5, and the prospect of returning to just the 3 of us makes the house feel empty already. But I'm also concerned about what fighting Julia in court will mean for Tyler and Zoe. They will most likely have to testify about what they want and why. That is a lot of strain to place on children, especially when they are already struggling with so much uncertainty. Julia hasn't attempted to take the kids since receiving the lawyer's letter, but she phones them almost daily now. She informs them about the wonderful things they'll do when they return home and how much she misses them. She promised Tyler that she'd get him a new bike and that Zoe could decorate her new bedroom whatever she wanted. I can see the children are torn. They adore their mother and want to believe she has changed, but they also recall what it was like before, when she forgot to pick them up or left them with strangers. They are old enough to recognize that promises are not the same as acts. I'm not sure how this is going to finish. I'm hoping the judge will realize that the kids are better off living with me, at least for now. But I also understand that Julia is their mother, and she has rights. All I can do now is submit our case and hope for the best. Update 2. The court hearing did not go as predicted. I expected to provide positive news in this update, but the issue has gotten more convoluted. The judge awarded me interim guardianship for only 6 months. Julia was granted supervised visits every other weekend, but she must finish a parenting class and maintain stable housing and job during this time. If she meets those standards, she can file for full custody again. I was happy Tyler and Zoe could stay with me for the time being, but I knew it was only a temporary solution. Julia appeared unconcerned with the ruling. She promised the kids that she would work hard to bring them back and that 6 months would pass swiftly. For the first month following the hearing, things appeared to be going well. Julia arrived for her scheduled visits and spent time with the children at our residence under supervision. She was on her best behavior, giving them modest gifts and discussing the apartment she was looking at and the job she was starting. But then I began hearing things that made me concerned. Tyler added that Julia had a lot of questions regarding our family's finances and how much money I made. She wanted to know if Lisa and I owned our home and had savings accounts. Tyler claimed she was quite interested in our cars and inquired if they were paid off. I found this weird, but I didn't make a big thing about it. Maybe Julia was just curious how we could afford to care for her children. However, Zoe informed me that Julia had instructed her to look around the house and remember where we stored critical files and paperwork. This raised red flags for me. I began paying greater attention to Julia's activities during her visits. I observed she was requesting to use the restroom frequently and taking longer than needed. Lisa claimed that she once saw Julia in our home office, stating she was looking for a pen to write a note for the kids. I decided to set up a tiny security camera in our living room. Not to spy on Julia's interactions with the kids, but to ensure that she wasn't snooping through our personal items. I did not inform anyone about the camera, including Lisa. 3 weeks ago, the camera recorded Julia snooping through our kitchen drawers as Tyler and Zoe were watching television. She was going through our mail and had taken images of several documents on her phone. I couldn't tell what she was photographing, but it was obvious she was up to something. I questioned Julia about it the following day. I informed her I noticed her digging through our belongings and inquired what she was looking for. She initially denied it, but later said she was only looking for a pen. When I told her I had it on tape, she became angry and said I was crazy. Julia stated that she was simply trying to comprehend how we could afford to care for her children while she was struggling financially. She felt it was unfair that I could better provide for Tyler and Zoe than she could. She wondered whether I was getting money from somewhere to help them with their bills. I informed her that Lisa and I worked hard to support our family and had made sacrifices to care for Tyler and Zoe. I explained that her financial position was not our fault, and that photographing our private paperwork was unacceptable. Julia became enraged and claimed I was being secretive and controlling. She said she had the right to know how her children were being maintained. She threatened to inform the court that I was keeping something from them. I spoke with my lawyer about this occurrence. She stated that Julia's behavior was wrong but probably not criminal. She encouraged me to document everything and to explore having Julia's visits transferred to a neutral site rather than our house. But before I could plan that, Something else happened. Our bank called and informed me that there had been some questionable activity on our account. Someone attempted to access our online banking using our account and routing numbers. The bank had blocked the attempt and wanted to confirm that it was not us. I immediately suspected Julia. The timing was quite convenient. I reviewed our recent bank records and discovered Julia may have obtained our account information from the deposit slips and checks that were occasionally left on our kitchen counter. I contacted the police and filed a report. The officer stated that they would investigate, but until they could prove Julia was responsible for the attempted access, there was little they could do. He suggested that I update our bank passwords and be extra cautious about keeping financial documents about the house. When I told my lawyer about it, she stated I had grounds to seek that Julia's visitation be suspended until the inquiry was completed. She filed a motion with the court detailing what had happened and requested that Julia's visits be halted temporarily. Julia's lawyer responded by suggesting that I was fabricating claims to keep her away from her children. She claimed that there was no evidence that Julia attempted to access our bank account and that I was simply sabotaging her chances of regaining custody. The judge set up a hearing to review the situation. Julia was there with her lawyer, and she appeared very different from how she had been acting on previous visits. She was angry and defensive, and she kept interrupting my lawyer while he was speaking. Julia's counsel said that I was neurotic and that Julia had never done anything to damage the children. She stated that Julia was making progress in her parenting lessons and had secured stable housing and a job. She claimed I was attempting to poison the children against their mother. However, when the judge addressed Julia directly about the bank account event, she was unable to respond truthfully. She stated that she was unaware of the situation, although she did speculate that someone else in our family may have attempted to access the account. She even suggested that one of the youngsters had done it unintentionally. The judge did not believe this explanation. He halted Julia's visitation pending the outcome of the police inquiry. He also told her to stay away from our residence and only contact the kids via monitored phone conversations twice a week. Julia lost it in court. She began shrieking that the system was rigged against her and that I was paying people to keep her children away from her. She stated that she was going to fight this and would not allow me to steal her children. The bailiff had to lead Julia out of the courtroom. Her lawyer seemed ashamed and requested a quick recess to speak with her client. When they returned, Julia was calmer but still plainly disturbed. Julia has since called the kids for scheduled phone talks, but the interactions have been tense. She keeps asking them questions about our family and our house, and she begins to make statements about how I'm attempting to turn them against her. Tyler and Zoe are perplexed and anxious by the entire situation. They don't understand why their mother went through our belongings, or why she can't visit them anymore. I've attempted to explain it in age-appropriate language, but it's difficult to help them grasp without getting into too much information. The police inquiry is still underway, but I don't believe they'll be able to prove anything. Julia is astute enough to have buried her tracks, and without concrete evidence, it's simply my word against hers. I'm concerned about what Julia will do next. She has demonstrated that she is willing to violate our privacy and possibly commit financial fraud in order to acquire what she wants. I'm not sure if she is desperate enough to try something more drastic or if she will simply continue to battle us in court. The kids are safe for the time being, but I know this is far from done. Julia isn't going to give up easily, and I'm concerned she'll escalate her behavior. I just hope the justice system protects Tyler and Zoe from whatever she has planned next. Update 3. I'm writing this final update because I want to conclude this chapter of our lives. Julia's predicament has finally been handled, though not in the way I imagined. Julia's behavior became more irregular following the last court hearing. The police inquiry into the bank account incident yielded no charges, but it was evident that Julia was desperate and willing to go to extreme lengths to achieve her goals. Julia defied the court order by showing up at Tyler's school. She tried to get him to depart with her during lunch break, telling him that I was keeping him from her unlawfully. Tyler was wise enough to go to the office and phone me rather than leave with her. The school phoned the cops, and Julia was detained for breaking the restraining order. She spent the night in jail and had to appear in court the following day. The judge renewed the restraining order and cautioned her that any further violations would have more serious implications. But Julia did not stop there. She began contacting our house at all hours, even the middle of the night. She would leave lengthy voicemails accusing me of kidnapping her children and threatening to reveal what she considered my unlawful acts. She claimed to have evidence that I was involved in some form of financial wrongdoing, but she never supplied any. The phone calls were impacting the entire household. Lily was having difficulties sleeping because she was worried Julia would show up at our place. Tyler and Zoe were always agitated and anxious. Lisa and I were fatigued from dealing with the relentless harassment. My lawyer urged me to document everything and file a permanent restraining order. She stated that Julia's behavior was clearly worsening, and that the court would certainly take it seriously given her history of infractions. A hearing for the permanent restraining order was planned. Meanwhile, Julia's supervised phone sessions with the kids were halted because she was repeatedly utilizing them to solicit information about our family and level charges against me. Something unexpected occurred. Julia's sister Rachel phoned me. I hadn't communicated with Rachel in years, but she said she needed to tell me about Julia's condition. Rachel informed me that Julia had been staying with her, and that she was deeply concerned about her sister's mental state. She claimed Julia was obsessed with reclaiming the children, and spent the majority of her time reading custody laws and devising strategies to demonstrate that I was unfit to care for them. Rachel claimed Julia had discussed kidnapping Tyler and Zoe and transporting them out of state. She'd been looking at apartments in various states and researched schools where she could enroll kids under fictitious names. Rachel was scared Julia would do something desperate and harmful. I immediately contacted both my lawyer and the police. The police accepted Rachel's information and stated that they would investigate. My lawyer said this was exactly the type of evidence we needed to prove Julia was a danger to the children. Julia vanished before the cops could act. Rachel called to inform me that Julia had packed her belongings and gone without mentioning where she was headed. She had borrowed Rachel's automobile without permission and has not been seen since. I was frightened that Julia might try to kidnap the kids from school or our home. I kept Tyler and Zoe home from school while the police looked for her. We improved our home security and ensured that our children were never left alone. The police discovered Rachel's automobile abandoned in a parking lot. There was no sign of Julia, and no one knew where she went. The police said they would continue to search for her, but they warned me that she could have left the state or possibly the country. Despite Julia's absence, the restraining order hearing went forward as scheduled. The judge approved the permanent restraining order and terminated Julia's parental rights, citing her habit of harassment, disobedience of court orders, and credible threat to the children's welfare. Tyler and Zoe's legal custody was awarded to me. The judge ruled that given Julia's mental state and threats to kidnap the children, it was in their best interest to be with me permanently. He also ruled that if Julia resurfaces, she must undergo a psychological evaluation and lengthy therapy before having any contact with the children. We still haven't heard from Julia, and the police inquiry has stalled. Tyler and Zoe now refer to Lisa and me as their parents, and Lily enjoys having her cousins as permanent siblings. We've enrolled Tyler and Zoe in counseling to help them understand what occurred, and they're doing well at school. I sometimes wonder where Julia is and if she is getting the treatment she needs. Despite everything she put us through, I hope she has found peace and stability. But I also hope she stays away from the kids till she feels better. Tyler and Zoe occasionally ask about their mother, usually around holidays or birthdays. I always tell them the truth. I don't know where mother is, but she loved them despite her horrible decisions. I want them to remember the pleasant times they shared with her before things went bad. We've adjusted to our new normal as a family of 5. It's not how I wanted my life to turn out, but I wouldn't change anything. Tyler and Zoe are thriving, and they have brought so much joy to our family. Lily has become an incredible big sister, and Lisa and I have discovered that we are stronger than we ever expected. I hope Julia can find her way back to good health someday. But for now the children are safe, happy, and loved. That is what matters most. Now let us go to the following narrative. Story 2. I kicked out my half-sister after years of no contact, and my father threatened to remove me from his will. Everything changed when he arrived at my door. I'm Julia, 32F, and my connection with my father has been strained for as long as I can recall. My parents divorced when I was just 3 years old. I have faint memories of furious arguments and stress in the house before they separated. My mother constantly attempted to protect me from the worst of the situation, but even as a toddler, I knew something was wrong. After the divorce, my father promptly remarried and relocated to another state. His new wife Carla came from an affluent family and had never worked in her life. They settled into a luxury lifestyle that was vastly different from the small flat my mother and I shared. Growing up, I only saw my dad a few times per year. He sent child support checks on a regular basis, but that was the extent of his engagement in my life. Our visits were consistently awkward and stilted. He'd take me to nice places and get me lavish gifts, but we never really bonded emotionally. My mother, on the other hand, was my rock. She worked long hours as a nurse to make ends meet, frequently picking up extra shifts to afford small extras for me. Despite her weariness, she always found time to help me with my homework, attend my school events, and simply talk about my day. She urged me to keep a relationship with my father, even when I didn't want to. As I grew older, I recognized how much she sacrificed for me and how little effort my father put in. I recall one event when I was about 10. I had a large piano recital that I had been practicing for months. My mother had requested a day off from work in advance to be there. I had also informed my father about it, thinking he would make the journey to see me perform. The day of the recital arrived, and my mother was beaming with pride. My father, unsurprisingly, did not show. He texted later, stating something had come up at work. I was distraught, but my mother consoled me and took me out for ice cream later. It was a trend that remained consistent throughout my youth and adolescence. My father and Carla have a daughter named Lily. I met her a few times, but we never had a close relationship. It was difficult to connect with my half-sister, who was much younger and whom I scarcely knew. Plus, seeing my father's care and affection for her made me experience a tinge of envy, something I had longed for years. As I approached adolescence, I became increasingly averse to visiting my father. Our time together was usually superficial, consisting of shopping trips or elegant dinners where we struggled to find topics to discuss. I started inventing excuses to avoid these visits, instead focusing on school activities and pals. My mother never pushed me to leave, but she always gently encouraged me to leave the door open. I attended a state institution not far from home. My mother had set aside a tiny education fund for me, and I worked part-time to finance the remainder. My father offered to cover my tuition, but I refused. I didn't want to feel obligated to him or give him the ability to govern my life. This decision seemed to startle and distress him, but I remained steadfast. I made much less effort to keep in touch with my father. The rare phone call reduced to birthday and holiday greetings. I was preoccupied with my own life, making friends, and pursuing my hobbies. I dated briefly, but nothing serious. My mother remained my strongest supporter, often offering advice or simply listening when I needed it. I got a job with a marketing agency in the city. I put myself into my career, working hard hours and rapidly moving up the corporate ladder. I met new people, traveled wherever I could, and overall relished my independence. My mother and I stayed close, speaking many times a week and getting together for supper whenever possible. Everything changed after my mother was diagnosed with severe breast cancer. I was devastated. She had always been the embodiment of health, always caring for others. She now needed someone to care for her. I promptly took a leave of absence from work to support her during her treatments. The following years were a whirl of hospital appointments, chemotherapy sessions, and fleeting moments of optimism, followed by shattering setbacks. Throughout it all, my mother remained optimistic, more concerned with how I was doing than with her own suffering. My father called several times to check in, but he never came. He claimed he didn't want to intrude, but I couldn't stop feeling abandoned all over again. Despite everyone's best efforts, my mother died. I was totally lost. The lady who had been my rock, best supporter, my entire universe was gone. I felt adrift, unsure how to manage life without her guidance or affection. To my astonishment, my father stood up in this difficult situation. He came to the burial and stayed for a week later, assisting me with sorting through my mother's belongings and simply being there for me. We had some wonderful conversations, and for the first time, I felt like I was seeing another side of him. He told me stories about my mother from when they were younger, and I discovered things about her that I had never known. It did not undo years of absence, but it was a start. We stayed in touch once he returned home. We talked over the phone every few weeks, and he even came to see me a few times. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but it was the best it had ever been. I began to believe that we would be able to develop something real, albeit later than I had hoped. My father called to tell me that Lily had been accepted to a university near where I live. He asked if I'd be willing to let her stay with me for the first semester while she settled in. I hesitated. I barely knew Lily and was worried about having a roommate. But my father looked excited about the prospect of us bonding, so I reluctantly consented. Lily arrived and the situation has been disastrous since the beginning. She is disorganized, thoughtless, and appears to have no idea of personal limits. She takes my meals and possessions without asking. She stays up late playing loud music and leaving her belongings strewn about the place. When I tried to establish some ground rules, she rolled her eyes and complained I was being too strict. The final straw arrived. When I got home from work, Lily had unexpectedly hosted a party in my apartment. There were at least 20 persons present, several of whom appeared inebriated. My living room was wrecked, and someone had poured red wine over my white couch, which belonged to my mother and carried sentimental value for me. I lost it. I kicked everyone out and told Lily she needed to find another place to live immediately. She began to scream and declare she had nowhere to go, but I remained firm. I helped her pack her belongings and phoned an Uber to take her to a nearby motel. My father called me, enraged. He claimed I was being harsh and selfish, and that families should stick together. He accused me of harboring grudges from the past and taking them out on Lily. He even threatened to cut me out of his will if I did not allow Lily to return. I am hurt and outraged. I believe my father is attempting to compensate for his absent parenting by forging a relationship between Lily and me without considering my feelings or respecting my boundaries. At the same time, I'm concerned that I'm overreacting and being too harsh with Lily.